Hello everybody, I'm Philip J. Watt, this is Dissect Media, and Rogan is back, Jones is on fire, Dorsey is destroyed by Tim Pool, and what is the future of the Joe Rogan Podcast? Well, you're about to find out. So I want this information to go as far and wide as possible. I just did a video of about 40 bloody minutes and it's too long, so I'm going to try and get this down to 10 or 15 minutes. I want to keep your attention because it's really important. So, Joe Rogan has been accused of selling out or not focusing on the truth, being biased, not being at the cutting edge of what's going on in the independent media. And he hasn't been. There's a lot of topics he hasn't yet covered, and he has really taken a backseat with some of the conspiratorial information, which I can understand. You know, he's probably got fear of him being deplatformed, just like Alex Jones. However, it's probably a good thing if you are, because there's a virtual breakaway civilization happening right now. People are choosing either freedom, decentralisation, re-empowerment of individuals and communities, and just general free speech and all that stuff. And at the moment, big tech and the mainstream are going further into centralisation, totalitarianism, censorship, and anti-freedom type practice, right? So basically, a lot of people are moving from the big tech to alt tech, such as Gab, Minds, DTubes, DMET, BitChute, other ones that are decentralized, open source type stuff. That's where we need to go as a collective. Many people are going individual at the moment, but not so much the mainstream, the masses. And so the more people that move that way, the better it's going to be for all of us. So if you did get deplatformed, Joe, probably a good thing. But anyway, moving on from that, he's back. He's drawn a line in the sand. He said, "Yep, I'm free speech," which is, probably more or less stated all along. I don't really follow him that closely. However, I sort of know the general gist of where he's gone. But he has really drawn this line in the sand by getting Alex Jones on as well. Alex spoke about a lot of stuff. I'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, it's really important. These two conversations are probably the most important conversations you're going to hear in 2019. Probably the most important ones you've heard over the last couple of years, especially because of the content, but also because of the sheer reach, the numbers that Joe's podcast reaches. So really good stuff. I recommend you listen to them all. Jones went for about 5 hours. The Dorsey one about 2.5 or 3 hours, something like that. But really good stuff. So in terms of what's going on with Jack Dorsey, Tim Pool, figuratively, metaphorically decapitated him, exposed him for his centralisation, biased ideological views, and censorship. And he's not really getting it. I think he's actually on these platforms like Joe because Twitter is hemorrhaging a lot of people. There are a lot of people leaving because of these issues. And so he's probably doing damage control. But regardless, good on him for being involved and actually being involved in the discussion. But we'll see what he does, because he needs to move away from the direction he's going. He needs to go open source, and he needs to go free speech and allow and celebrate and facilitate freedom for humanity. He's not doing it at the moment, and that's been clearly shown through that podcast and elsewhere. It was a really good discussion in terms of the brilliance of basically making it really clear. What do you want? What do you want as a person listening to this? Do you want freedom or do you want control? Do you want decentralization or do you want centralization? Do you want free speech or do you want censorship? And I know it gets a bit difficult to manage when it comes to hate speech, and hate speech has been twisted to mean that you can't even have an ideological critique without it being hate speech. So that's getting really, really dodgy. I know it gets a little bit challenging, but ultimately you've got to draw that line in the sand. What side do you want? Do you want to make sure that we're moving forward in an honourable way, or are we going to start to try and control further? Now, look, of course, Joe brought up some really good stuff. He talked about civil discourse, and I've been speaking about this for a long time. We need to make sure that we're honourable and respectful towards ourselves in life in general, but also to how we communicate with others, how we interact with others, and of course how we communicate online, because at the moment it's just domestically violence central. The abuse online, it's toxic, it's tragic, coming from both the left and right, from all types of people, and it's very sad to see, because a lot of the fight is about, no, you're wrong, and the other side's like, no, you're wrong. And both sides believe they have the moral high ground, like they truly believe in what they're right, but they go about abusing each other. And so it's really important that we don't back people into a corner and get their defense mechanisms up, because they never change, ever. No one ever learns when you're aggressive with them, ever. They always either go or fight or flight, essentially, and or fright as well. And so if we want to make sure that we're building our team together and all moving in, or most of us moving into the right direction, we need to have communication, proper communication with each other, where we all learn. Because let's not forget, we're the ones that might be wrong. I can guarantee that right now, as it has happened in the future, as it in the past, as it will happen in the future, we're all wrong at different times on different levels. And so if we're open to that, humble about that, then our discourse is going to be a lot more educational and result with an expansion of our collective and individual awareness. Super important. So well done, Joe, for pointing that out, and well done for hosting this discussion. Incredibly important. Now I'll move on to Alex Jones. I haven't really been a massive fan. You know, I don't dislike him or like him or anything like that. He's been a bit too intense and a bit too crazy conspiratorial and all that sort of stuff. However, after watching this for 5 bloody hours, and he was intense on many levels, and he was protagonistic and many different things, but he's a bit of a legend of a man. If he's the real deal, if he's not being controlled, if he's not, what do they call it, controlled opposition, then fantastic. The work he's done, he's got a lot of experience, he's been doing a lot, exposing a lot of truth. He's been discussing this and working this field for a long, long time. So not only did he focus a lot on his material stuff, the conspiratorial stuff, but he also talked about a bit of the metaphysics stuff, and that was great to see. Unfortunately, he takes more the Gnostic view, where the manifestation of this, whatever this is, a simulation or this life abundant reality, well, I'll get into this in a moment, he looks at it more as a negative thing. So we've got a false god, it's malevolent at its core, etc. And I don't look at it like that way. I love to focus on the magic, the wonder, the mystery, the beauty, the honor, the amazing stuff that we've got in our reality, as we do with the shadow. So all the darkness, deception, lies, and bullcrap as well, which needs to be exposed. It needs to be integrated from the shadow to move forward in a more healthy way, of course. However, a lot of people forget about all the good stuff and focus on just the bad stuff. And so that conversation alone was probably good for the conspiratorial world to think a little bit deeper about some of these metaphysics. Unfortunately, Alex does focus on it ultimately as a negative thing, and that might persuade people to think that way. But it was a pretty good conversation. It was great for Joe to get him on board and get him to really have a crack at this stuff, because it's so bloody important that we start again having civil discourse about this stuff. There's many issues that Joe needs to move forward about and expose on his platform, and I'll get to those in a moment, because there's all this debate happening underground, behind the scenes, in the independent media, and there's a lot that we need to start focusing on. And look, I know it's challenging and difficult on many layers, on many levels, but the truth shall set you free, as the adage goes. So we need to make sure we honor that process of integrating the shadow, and also really focusing on the brightness that we can create as we move forward. Just a quick discussion on the solutions to censorship. Now, big tech will die if they continue on this path, because people don't want censorship. They want free speech in general. The strong majority do. So the more that they do that, the more people are going to go to alt tech. Not only that, though, we need a internet bill of rights. Pretty important, I think, to make sure that these companies online, because we used to have a pretty decentralized internet. Now it's quite centralized, huge proportion of it, because of these big monopolistic structures. So we need to resolve that somehow, maybe through an internet bill of rights. But we also need to compete with them through publicly owned software and hardware infrastructure. So things like email services and social media services, and just public media in general, as well as like physical lines, communication lines, they can all be built into the Australia Post Network or the United States Postal service, I think it's called. These two services in Australia and US were originally designed to ensure the free flow of information, the dissemination of information, to ensure that censorship was circumnavigated and that dictatorial governments couldn't arise. And so they need to be transitioned onto the digital stage. At the moment, they're failing to adapt to modern society, but we should discuss this. We should discuss this as a solution, just like we need to have public banking and public money and public essential services to ensure affordable services. I'm not against capitalism or free market or anything like that, but those parts of society are very, very important. We don't want, for example, private stakeholders and shareholders enriching themselves off creating money out of nothing like they do now, when all those profits from money creation, i.e. the interest, can get reinvested in for community needs and social infrastructure and stuff. So there's one example of where publicly owned infrastructure is important. It needs to be done the right way, of course. However, it can be done, and it should be done when it comes to our communication, our information dissemination networks. So that is super important. I'll put a link into a video to watch in the article I'm doing. Now, let's move on. How he needs to proceed, because he's drawn a line in the sand. He said he wants to follow the truth, follow freedom. So let's see what he does, because there's many more great discussions we need to have, including, for starters, let's unite the left and right again. I'm not left or right. I'm above it. I rise above that crap and go, oh, look, some of the left is good, some of the right is good, and the rest of it's just crap. So I'm not dictated to by political ideology. I just like to pick and choose what matches and resonates with me. Plain and simple. I wish we all do that. Unfortunately, that's not how the reality is right now. But I'm sure we can start building discussions in to help create that. So again, we can build our team, build people power, and start moving in a better direction. Big questions is there's a massive debate about climate change. Now, a lot of people think, well, CO2, global warming. I'm not even going to bother getting into that, because the climate is changing. It's always changed. We've had a pretty relatively stable climate for the last few thousand years, considering the craziness of it over the history of the Earth. However, there's other things that are included in this debate. One of the big ones is sun science. So the sun, we're going through a grand solar minimum. The sun electromagnetic field is shrinking. We're in the sun's electromagnetic field and gravitational field, just like we're in the moon. The moon's gravity affects the water on Earth, meaning it affects us because we're 70-90% water. Of course, the moon is having an impact on different layers of us psychologically and biochemically and all those things, as is the sun on all those layers. But not only that, when it decreases its field, more cosmic particles, dust, radiation, etc. gets into our Earth system, our weather system. It affects that. It can also interrupt volcanic activity and many different things. So that is a big part of the debate that isn't mainstream yet. The science is really good on it, but it's not mainstream yet, and it needs to be discussed. Joe needs to focus on that. The other big part is also, of course, the Earth's magnetic poles, which have moved dramatically over the last few decades, like huge amounts compared to what it's moved over the last several hundred years or whatever it is. So that is a real big one. How is that interrupting our weather and our other climatic and environmental systems? These need to be included in the debate, as well as this. Why aren't we focusing on biodegradable plastics such as hemp, biofuels such as made from hemp, hempcrete or concrete such as made from hemp, all these bloody good environmentally safe products, as well as polycultural food and resource systems such as permaculture that can repair and prevent the destruction of our environment, because we have caused a lot of pollution and a lot of impacts, regardless of climate change and all that stuff. We need to start taking better care, and we can do it through moving away from oil-based products to plant-based products such as hemp. So that's a big part of the debate, including permaculture, meaning localizing our food and resource systems so that we've got more healthy food, we're more engaged, better education, community inclusivity, community sustainability, and safeguarding against financial shocks in the future or any other security risk. And just again, building that community self-sustainability, super important. Okay, another question that needs to happen is what's going on in Antarctica? Why all the secrets? That's a big question. Let's debate that. I mean, I'm not sure if Joe has had that on the podcast. Again, I'm not completely following his work, so I might be missing parts here and there. And if there are any questions that are raised now and that are important to you, or focal points that are important to you, comment. Let us know. And please share this. Let's see how far we can get this. Let's see how far we can get this basic snapshot of what the collective debates are right now, and as well as how we can start incorporating them into our general discourse in humble, honourable ways. Okay, so thousands of studies have showed the damaging impacts on humans by electromagnetic pollution. Right, there are actually people who can't be around Wi-Fi and other electromagnetism from technologies because it actually makes them sick. So they've moved to places where they don't exist. So how much is that impacting us, and what is 5G's role in that? Super important question. 9/11 story, of course, Joe talked about that on the recent podcast with Alex. He's a skeptic of the official story, as you should be. Everybody should be bloody skeptic of that official story because it's bunk. There's thousands upon thousands of engineers and architects that say that it's physically not impossible for the official story to be true. They've taken it to a grand jury, which is currently being considered in the United States. So the evidence has been laid out before the courts. Let's see what happens from that. We need some of these really good people, these experts, to be discussing this stuff to so many people on Joe's podcast. The next one is corporate money controlling scientific funding. Now, that is a really big one because a lot of people are automatically have faith in scientific journals, but there are many whistleblowers, including journal editors, such as The Lancet, which I think one of them was a journal editor for 20 years, and after they retired, came out and said, look, half of the studies are crap. They're falsified, they're inaccurate, fraudulent, corrupted by big money, because basically most of science is funded by corporations because that's how to make money from it. So that not only is there not a focus on amazing stuff such as parapsychology, which isn't a pseudoscience. Parapsychology is a robust science, but it is showing there is a connection, a interaction, an impact from mind on matter. That's a big one, and that's based on quantum physics in terms of the entanglement, wave and particle duality, and all that sort of the field interaction. And so that needs to be definitely tabled. It's only been called a pseudoscience because it couldn't fit into materialism model. Materialism's dead. Quantum physics, parapsychology, and psychology has proven it. It isn't just bottom up. Matter create mind. Mind has an impact on matter, such as the placebo effect, and mind actually interacts with its environment, draws information from it, also from the future and the past as well. So there's lots of woo-woo crazy stuff with all that, but it's being scientifically measured. So that needs to be built into the system. Now, I know the Sam Harrises have moved over to panpsychism, which essentially is an extension of materialism. So they say that matter is in everything all the way down. Consciousness is in all matter, all the way down to the atom or whatnot, and it's creating the consciousness. We need to flip that. Essentially, that's where the evolution, the revolution is going on in philosophical analysis of reality. We're now moving from matter creates mind to either mind creates matter or mind and matter, same thing, two sides of the one coin. So that's where we're shifting, and Joe really needs to get real smart people on his podcast about that. I recommend Gordon White from Rune Soup Podcast. He's sort of a friend of mine. He's a great guy. His intellectual esotericism is fantastic. He'll be able to unwrap that really well. Joe's already had people like Rupert Sheldrake on there. Fantastic work with Rupert and his work in parapsychology and other scientific study. He should have him back on, as well as Dean Radin and many of these people. This is where the debate is. This is where the true academic scientists and philosophers are debating right now. We're not debating materialism and panpsychism. That's gone. We've moved on because of what the data says so, as well, both soft and hard data, as well as experiential. I mean, my experience is I'm very, very entangled with my reality. It's been proven to me hundreds upon hundreds of times in massive ways since the last 20 years. That's why I'm a spiritual person, why I honor my connection with connection, because it manifests in all this weird synchro-mysticism or synchronicity or symbolism, really weird, strange, meaningful coincidences, powerful ones that I just go, fuck, like, all right, I'm connected. You've proven your point. Well, I'm also an individual thing, an individual snapshot of infinite consciousness or awareness. Sure, I'm individual, having an individual experience, part of an interconnected totality, and the connection shows itself in different ways at different times. And so I'm both things. I'm both an individual and part of the whole. Just like an ecosystem, just like we're part of the ecosystem of the planet. Bees pollinate plants, creates food. Without it, we die. Then, of course, the whole weather system, the whole planet system. Then, of course, how the solar system, how the sun and the moon impacts the planet, and even the planets themselves, which is there's all this subtle energy or electromagnetic energy or gravitational force that is creating changes in our planet and also changes in our physiology and ultimately our psychology. And so that's the scientific basis for astrology right there, of course. But I look at it as astrology as more of a system of symbolism, which is another interconnection type analysis. But again, I won't go there, too far to unpack. But yeah, you can look at it ecologically, you can look at it quantum physically, you can look at it metaphysically, you can look at mind-body connection. There's many ways of understanding you're in a connection with reality. That's my spirituality. I would suggest and encourage everybody to have a respect for that interconnection process they're involved with, including family and genes. And that's where Alex is going with it. He's like, yeah, what you can do is basically where we've got these we're in a life abundant reality where there's all these layers of life and all these dimensions, and there's also parasitic type, maybe unconscious type energies or entities or intelligences or spirits. That's what animism actually talks about. So instead of it being matter creates mind, mind creates matter, that mind has got all this type of intelligence in there, including what animism talks about, which is spirit. And spirit isn't like a ghost hanging around going, ooh. No. Spirit's more the creative agency, the intelligent agency that all life has, that everything has in terms of life. So instead of looking at as some things have life, everything is life, just different frequencies of life, including that which we can't see, because we can only see on a very, very narrow band on the electromagnetic spectrum. So therefore, there could be all these other dimensions of existence that are coexisting in this actual space right now, which is why Alex is talking about taking ayahuasca or DMT or doing meditation or near-death experience or any of those other things, where you're basically shifting your filter. So think about the body-brain neurology, the whole system, your system, as not a creating consciousness, but filtering consciousness or awareness or mind, right? So you're basically a TV channel. Your body's a TV channel. And you can sometimes change your channel, so you can move your filter so that you're seeing, when you're dreaming, when you're having these psychedelic experiences, when you're having these meditation experiences, religious experiences, you're moving your filter to different frequencies on the bandwidth, right? On the spectrum, the linear one, the non-linear one, many ways to describe it. But ultimately, what you can do sometimes, especially when you take these substances. I've been to Peru and had ayahuasca with shamans and, amazingly crazy stuff, and very, very reflective of life being abundant on all these different levels. I had conversations with Mother Ayahuasca herself and all these different so-called spirits and aliens or whatever you want to call them. And could it be all a figment of imagination? Sure. Could it be real? Sure. Could it be a combination of both? Sure. Could it be my own filter, experiencing particular creative intelligence in the way that I'm culturally and individually able to perceive? Sure. Who knows the answers? However, there is life everywhere. And so what Alex was saying is that, yeah, but it's scary, it's malevolent, it's not really a real construct. We're in a virtual simulation, and it's a zoo where maybe we've all just been chucked here, like in a zoo, or maybe as Joe talked about, there was aliens or whatever it was, interdimensional realities, entities came down and manipulated our DNA at a certain stage, and bam, suddenly we've combined monkeys to create humans. Who knows? That all could be true. Or different frequencies of reality. I won't elaborate on that. Big metaphysical questions, and I love it. That's exciting, and I find empowering and elicits wonder and mystery. I don't get scared of that, and so I'm not in line with Alex's sort of interpretation of it all. But anyway, going back to the pseudoscience of materialism, we need to get on Joe's podcast. People are at the cutting edge of this discussion. because there's much more advanced people who are discussing this than what he's had on there. And I'm no bloody expert either. You know, I'm a typical Aussie guy. I'm doing my research, having my experience, creating my writing, doing my book. I've got a unique perspective. I offer a truth and a freedom that is unique to my experience, sure, but there's many other great experts out there that are really digging down into the details of many of these discussions. All right, so let's wrap this up. There's other areas that he might need to discover, such as officially sponsored geoengineering, such as talked about by Harvard, and who else was it? I think it was NASA or the UN. It was actually. So they're talking about now. So how long has covert geoengineering or chemtrails been going on? We need to ask those questions. Current false flag operations, what's going on? We know false flags are real. That's a matter of public record. So what's going on right now, or what has in the past, such as 9/11, are they potential false flags? What is going on there? What are the potential psyops of our days, the psychological operations to basically brainwash people to be passive and not get active in whatever it may be? The human and sex trafficking realities, kids, how they're being treated. There's some bloody sick people out there. It's crazy. So that needs to be we need to expose that. Again, integrate the shadow. Big one, anti-Semitism being used to debunk or destroy anyone's perspective or whatever, just because they're raising things around Israeli behavior against the Palestinians, as well as Zionist behavior in terms of their huge influence over money, central banking, media, Hollywood, and all those other things. So that I think that's fair. Let's have that discussion. Just because they've got an ideological sway doesn't mean just because. What we're doing is we're looking at the evidence, what the results are, and then tracing it back. Where is it coming from? Where are these decisions coming from? And some people are concerned about Zionist influence on our world. Why are they not allowed to discuss that? It's not anti-Semite. They're not saying, they're not against Jews. Jews, blacks, whites, Christians, whoever we're talking about, men, women, all these different subcultures. Most people in general are pretty good, right? Then most people don't want to cause harm on each other. If you follow the natural right of us all having the supreme authority over ourselves while still being held accountable for doing no harm unless in self-defense, then you're on my bloody team. But if you want to cause harm to other people, then, well, you're going against natural law and you're going against yourself, really, because you're all interconnected, right? So, of course, we're allowed to talk about how the particular behavior of particular people. There's nothing wrong with that. And you can't just go and label it bloody anti-Semite or racist or sexist or whatever it is because you've got a different perspective, or one that's, that is trying to actually uncover what the truth is. So nothing wrong with that. Moving on, the corporatocracy eroding democracy. It's a big one I focus on. The money supply, the medicine, the media, and the management, the 4Ms I call it. We need to expose that and really get that into public consciousness so we can create a social system that is honourable and we can be proud to leave behind for ourselves and our future generations, our children, etc. All right, moving on. That's a lot to cover. Joe, I hope you get this. I hope you listen to this. I really want you to share this. I'm going to embed this in an article to get it as far as wide as possible. Let's see how far we can get the discourse, this civil discourse that Joe wants. Let's see how we can actually move really in that direction. Because as I said, there's a lot of people moving towards this individual freedom and decentralisation and re-empowerment and all those things, including free speech. We need to help people move away from this bloody censorship and centralisation, control and brainwashing and propaganda and all that stuff, and help people to be more happy, healthy, honourable and heroic beings. Thanks for watching. I'm Philip J. Watt. My website, healbyhypnosis.com. If you need any help with any states of suffering that you might be struggling with. And thanks for watching. We'll speak next time.